If you have ever been judged by the people who were supposed to know you best, then you already understand how this story begins. For 18 years, my own family believed I was the biggest disappointment in the house. They thought I drifted from one temporary job to another, depended on my parents to survive, and had never accomplished anything worth talking about. I never argued with them or tried to defend myself. While they laughed about my life around the dinner table, I was serving as an Army bomb technician, carrying scars from missions I could never discuss, and secretly paying the bills that kept my parents from losing their home. I returned to Millfield, Ohio, 6 days before my younger brother Ethan's wedding. The whole house buzzed with wedding excitement. Everyone was focused on flowers, music, decorations, and seating charts. I stayed in the small apartment above the garage, the same place I always slept whenever I came home between deployments. Nobody asked where I had traveled from or what I actually did for work. It was as if my life outside that town simply did not exist. I helped wherever I could, carrying boxes, setting up chairs, and fixing small problems without expecting anyone to notice. The biggest moment came during the suit fitting. Ethan stood on the platform joking with his groomsmen while I quietly steamed jackets in the corner. I had always been good at becoming invisible. One of the groomsmen smiled at me and casually asked what I did for a living. Before I could answer, Ethan laughed and said I never kept a job for very long and still relied on Mom and Dad. My father chuckled into his coffee and the rest of the room joined in. I simply smiled and kept working because after hearing the same joke for nearly 2 decades, the pain had stopped feeling new. Then everything changed because of one simple mistake. As I reached for Ethan's jacket, my sleeve slipped back just enough to expose the thick burn scar wrapped around my wrist. One of the groomsmen, Ryan Carter, immediately stopped smiling. His eyes locked onto the scar, and I watched the color disappear from his face. He quietly asked where I got it. I shrugged and called it a workplace accident before pulling my sleeve back down, but he did not believe me. Without another word, he stepped outside and made a phone call. Less than half an hour later, 2 veterans rushed into the shop. They looked directly at me before one of them quietly spoke a military call sign I had not heard in 12 years. The room instantly fell silent. Ryan slowly explained that during a mission in Afghanistan, his platoon had become trapped inside a dry irrigation canal. A buried explosive blocked their only escape, while enemy fire closed in from every direction. I had crawled toward the bomb alone. A hidden secondary charge exploded, setting my sleeve on fire, but I pinned the burning fabric beneath my arm and kept working until the explosive was safe. 11 soldiers escaped that valley alive. Ryan had carried me onto the evacuation helicopter but never learned my real name, because I lost consciousness before we reached the base hospital. My brother looked completely frozen. My father stood there speechless as if the ground beneath him had disappeared. Nobody knew what to say. I broke the silence by quietly thanking Ryan for remembering, picked up the jacket, and finished steaming it. Some habits never leave you. I have always believed unfinished work deserves more attention than wounded pride. That evening, my father followed me outside and tried to apologize, but I gently stopped him. I told him the wedding deserved to stay about Ethan, not about old mistakes. The following night, after the rehearsal dinner, I finally sat down with my parents and told them everything they had never known. I explained how I enlisted at 18 after our family hardware store began failing, because I wanted the little money we had left to help my brother attend college. I told them about 4 deployments, the explosion that nearly destroyed my arm, 11 months inside a military burn center, and the automatic payments that had quietly covered their property taxes and insurance for almost 10 years. My mother broke down when she realized every Sunday phone call she remembered came from a hospital, rehabilitation courtyard where I was learning how to walk, write, and use my burned arm again. While she happily talked about church events, neighborhood gossip, and new curtains for the living room, I never once mentioned the pain because hearing her voice reminded me what I was fighting to come home to. Ethan did not react the way I expected. Instead of thanking me, he became angry. He said I had let the family embarrass themselves for years. I calmly looked at him and said the only thing that needed saying. I never lied to any of you. You simply believed the easiest version of me and repeated it loud enough that it became your truth. He walked away without another word. 3 mornings later, just before sunrise, someone knocked on my door. Ethan stood there holding 2 terrible cups of gas station coffee with dark circles under his eyes. He quietly asked me to tell him the whole story, this time from the beginning. So I did. I described every second of that mission, the buried wires, the hidden explosive, the fire climbing my sleeve, and the checklist I repeated in my mind while my skin burned. When I finished, I told him something I had learned after years in uniform. Real courage almost never looks heroic. Most of the time, it is simply taking the next necessary step, even when every instinct tells you to stop. He lowered his head and admitted he had spent years calling me useless without ever asking who I really was. He said he did not deserve immediate forgiveness, but he wanted the chance to earn back my trust. From that day forward, he stopped apologizing with words and started proving himself through actions. He moved me from the overflow table to the family table, protected my privacy, and refused to let anyone turn my military service into a wedding spectacle. During the reception, I found a small folded card waiting beside my dinner plate. Inside were 11 names written by Ryan. No explanation. No dramatic message. Just the names of the soldiers who made it home because one bomb never exploded. Somehow those 11 names meant more to me than any medal I had ever received. When it came time for the speeches, Ethan stood, took a deep breath, and raised his glass. He never mentioned the military or my past. Instead, he thanked the person who taught him that the strongest people are often the ones doing the hardest work long before anyone notices. He looked at me for only a moment before turning back to the guests, giving me something I had never expected from him. Respect without turning my life into a performance. Later that night, my father quietly asked me to dance. As the music played, he admitted he had spent years believing the wrong story about his own daughter. Then he looked me in the eyes and said something I will never forget. I am done telling the old story. From now on, I am simply proud to call you my child. The next morning, I boarded the bus with one duffel bag and both sleeves rolled all the way up. For years, I had hidden my scars because I thought they would make other people uncomfortable. This time, I left them uncovered. Not because I wanted attention, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood a truth that no amount of recognition could ever replace. Your worth is never determined by the people who failed to see it. Sometimes the greatest victories are not the battles you survive. They are the moments when you finally stop asking permission to be proud of the life you have lived.